Okay.
Hey, Tony, great to have you with us. Tell everybody who's watching just a little bit about yourself, your role with Real Life Church, and I don't know, why you're a Colts fan. That'd be a great piece of information.
Okay. Well, my name is Tony. I sit as the care pastor at Real Life Church, and what I do is I oversee all the care groups, the divorce care, single mom parenting, marriage classes, our mental health groups, but also a really big component of the care that most people don't realize is Celebrate Recovery. That's a great ministry where we help people get over the hurts, habits, hang-ups, and during this time of COVID, a lot of those issues rear their ugly heads. So that's one of the roles that I sit in. Also, Colts fan. That's a long story, but basically because I became a Colts fan because I had a roommate in Washington State that was a huge Marshall Faulk fan. I, by default, became a Marshall Faulk fan. Colts drafted him, and I stayed a Colts fan when he left, and that just dated me, Rusty. Thank you very much for those that follow football. They know when Marshall Faulk was drafted.
That is a long time ago. Good for you.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, well, let's just get right to it. You deal with a lot of anxiety issues for our people and helping them manage that, and depression and those kind of things as the care pastor, and grief groups and divorce recovery, all those kind of things.
Mhm.
So right now, as people are wrestling with COVID-19 and specifically the fear of it, how do you encourage people manage their anxiety during this season?
That's a great question. And there's a lot of great tools, Rusty, that are available to us. What we're doing right now through Zoom, that's a great way to manage anxiety, talking with a friend, talking with a counselor, talking with a pastor. There's great teleconference medicine going on where people are getting in touch. Stay in touch with others. I would say don't isolate yourself. That's very easy. We're encouraged to practice social distancing, but I think we should, to coin a phrase my friend Kevin Paisano said, was practice physical distancing, not social distancing. We need that social interaction. So I would say that that's one key aspect of managing our anxiety. Talk with others, let people know what's going on. And in homes, that can be really difficult when we're all together. We all are in an area not knowing how to manage our anxieties or simply how to communicate with one another. So that's a good way to get it going.
You have a great resource that we will link to this email that's going out to our people. Can you just walk us through some of the things that you've listed as ways to manage it? I believe there's several different words that start with the letter R. Can you walk
Mhm.
us through a few of those?
Yeah, there's a great document that I actually came up with when we were doing the anxiety series, and it's simply how to handle anxiety biblically. And that's based off of Paul's letter to the in Philippians 4, verses 4 through 9. And it gives 7 practical steps on how to handle anxiety, because most people don't know how to handle anxiety in a biblical way. We could just simply say, oh, you know what, hand it over to God. You know what, pray and it'll go away. And that sounds great. And that sounds like we're supposed to do that. And we're supposed to be encouraging one another. But practically, what does that look like? Well, there's 7 steps. One, we're called to rejoice in the Lord always. And I know right now that's really hard because people are saying, I might lose my job. I might lose my home. How do I do that? Well, we're not calling you to rejoice that that's happening. We're calling you to rejoice that Christ is here. So there's that. There's several other steps. Resolving to be happy. I'm going to resolve to make sure that Christ is there. I'm going to resolve to be patient and gentle during this time, because I can tell you what, Rusty, being in a home filled with people that are stressed to the max, it is hard to be gentle and patient sometimes. But when we resolve to be gentle, that lets us know that, you know what, I'm going to turn this over to God in this chaos. I'm going to allow Him to reign and rule in my life. And He's going to start ruling and bringing that comfort, that peace to my life. And there's a bunch of other steps right here that we'll cover in the email that you give out. And there's one step that I really want to hit upon really quick, and that's found in verse 6. It's relying on prayer. We know that prayer moves mountains. And Jesus tells us if you have the faith of a mustard seed, you could tell this mountain or this should be uprooted and it would. Faith and prayer go so hand in hand. And in verse is 6, it says, "Be anxious for nothing, but everything in prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus." I love that verse in this passage because what we don't realize, it's very easy to overshoot that verse, just go over it. But when we look at the original language right there, the phrase for will guard, that is a word that's used to describe a night watchman, somebody that's standing a post, guarding everybody when they're at their most vulnerable state. When we're stuck in fear, when we're stuck in panic, we are vulnerable. And God is saying in that moment, when you come to me in prayer, when you come to me in hope and trust, I will guard you in a way that you will never be able to fully understand on this side of eternity. My peace will guard your heart and mind so that you don't drift into anxiety and fear. I love that the God of the universe is promising us that he's going to protect us and guard us when we're vulnerable. So that's a couple of them. I encourage people to go over that anxiety document. There's several steps that when you practice these steps, it will keep you from drifting into fear and anxiety.
That's great, Tony. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit here. Let's just talk about the basics of everybody's together 24/7. It used to be, we left home for school or for work or for the gym or whatever, and we had a little bit of alone time from each other. We don't have much of that now.
Mhm.
So, what do you recommend to marriages specifically so people don't get a divorce at the end of COVID?
That is a great question. I read a troubling article the other day, one that you sent me that was really good, and another one from the New York Times saying that in New York, the divorce rate during COVID is spiking astronomically. And that is truly sad. But I would say, you know what, to solidify our marriages, to prevent them from drifting that way, one, we got to build in some natural tools that are going to help us. Like one, separation, time apart, not in the sense that we're separating, but I mean, have your alone time, have your quiet time, time where you get to debrief, time where you're reading something, time where you're listening to music, time where you're journaling, time it's just for you. Now, for me, I use that as a time to have my devotional and my quiet time. So that way I'm making sure that I'm filled. I'm giving my cares, my worries, my concerns over to God. That builds in that natural buffer. And then I would encourage spouses to realize we're all freaked out. We're all in unprecedented waters, uncharted territory. What you might see as somebody being angry and upset might be their reaction to fear. The fear of, I have no idea if we're going to have resources to pay rent. I have no idea if we're going to have food. I don't even know if we're going to get sick. We don't have health care. I would say don't interpret those angry responses as directly at that person. A phrase that I use for counseling is don't take things personal. In marriages, when our spouses are freaking out, we take it as a direct personal attack. I would encourage one another to look at that as them lashing out for help and have heartfelt conversations. Simply say, how are you really doing today? How are you doing right now in this moment? How can I pray for you? Help me to understand what's going on.
I read something about, and maybe it's something you share with me or I share with you about typically when there's anger or there's something that we don't like, we seek to correct, let's fix
Mhm.
that. But this article said seek connection more than correction.
Yes.
So just kind of asking that question, tell me why you feel that way. Because as we know, anger is always the second emotion. The first one is fear or grief or sadness. Let's get into what that is and get past the anger.
Yeah.
Any steps to questions like for our kids when we're trying to connect with them rather than just correct them?
Yeah, that was a great. I saw a great video that was explaining that point, and it gave the illustration of a wife walking in the kitchen in the middle of the night, and she's stubbing her toe, and a husband coming in to find her in pain on the floor. In that moment, she doesn't need correction and saying, "Well, this is what you need to do so that you don't stub your toe next time." She needs that connection, that empathy, that love, that "I'm so sorry you did that." Same thing in our marriages. Husbands, we tend to be fixers. Wives could be bawling, and more often than not, we'll say, "This is what you need to do to fix that problem. This is how you handle that conference call." No, we don't need that. We need to be connected. We need to connect at a heart level. We need to understand what's going on by having those conversations, by being empathetic. Husbands, it might be hard for us to be empathetic in this moment, but we could simply say, "You know what? I'm so sorry that you're feeling that way. Help me to understand this. How can I love you better? How can I help you through this?" So when we connect on that heart level, like last night, we had a great time of family connection. We had in our backyard, we're able to have a barbecue, or not a barbecue, I mean, a fire pit. We had a fire pit and s'mores. We connected at a heart level over a couple of hours last night just to bond. And I asked my family, "How are you doing? What's going on right now in your world? What are your friends doing?" I have a high school senior that's getting ready to graduate. I asked her, "I'm so sorry that you're going to most likely miss your graduation. You worked really hard for that. Let's talk about that." That's how we connected at a heart level. I didn't need to do any correction when people are stressing out and being angry. I just need to connect.
That's so good. Well, Tony, if people want more and want to connect with you and ask questions, how can they best get a hold of you?
That's a great question. I have a lot of tools on how husbands or how parents can bless their spouses, their kids, how they can love for one another, how we can practice the one another's. Because I truly believe that when we take our focus off of the horizontal aspect of what's going on and focus vertically by practicing the one another's, we're able to rise above the fears that we find ourselves in. So I have a lot of tools on what does that practically look like, how do we practice one another. So in that sense, if you're looking for that, please reach out, send me a quick note to care@reallifechurch.org, and I will send you what I have. We're currently working on retooling our website so that I can have a toolbox for people, that we can have different tools, different avenues for people to practice the one another's.
That's great. Tony, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Sure, no problem, Rusty. Thank you very much.